My mother abandoned me at 4 years old. Now she returns after 20 years begging me to donate my kidney. But when I discovered she lied and manipulated me, I sued her and got a restraining order that left her broken. I'm 25 years old. I work in tech as a software developer. I'm engaged to an incredible woman named Nicole. And basically, I need to get this out because what happened with my biological mother these last few months has been so absolutely sick that I'm still struggling to process it. The thing is, when I say my biological mother, there's already a whole story there, because the woman I consider my real mom is my Aunt Barbara, who raised me since I was like 4 years old. And yeah, there's a reason my biological mother, Karen, didn't raise me, and that reason is basically that she abandoned me when I was a little kid and disappeared from my life for 20 complete years. Let me start from the beginning because otherwise this won't make sense. When I was 4 years old, Karen left me with some neighbors, like literally knocked on their door, left me standing there with a small backpack, and left, just like that. The neighbors waited a day, then 2, then a week, and Karen never came back for me. I don't remember much from those days. Honestly, my memory from that time is super blurry, but what I do know is what they told me later. That basically they abandoned me like I was a package they didn't want anymore. Social services got involved. They tried to find Karen, but she had completely disappeared. Changed her number, moved, everything. And then my Aunt Barbara appeared, Karen's younger sister, who at that time was like 28 years old and wasn't married or had kids of her own. Barbara fought like crazy to be able to adopt me. I remember vaguely going to her apartment for the first time. She had bought a bunch of toys and had a room prepared for me with dinosaurs on the walls because someone told her I liked dinosaurs. I don't know if I actually liked them or not, but she made the effort, you know? She never made me feel different, never treated me like I was a burden or a favor she was doing for her sister. She raised me along with my grandparents, who were also incredible to me, and my cousin Dylan, who's 2 years older than me and basically was like my older brother my whole life. I grew up knowing that Barbara wasn't my biological mom, but honestly, it didn't matter much to me. She explained it to me when I was little, like 7 or 8 years old. She told me that my birth mother couldn't take care of me, so she decided she was going to take care of me because she loved me. Just that simple. She didn't make a drama out of it, didn't talk bad about Karen, just told me the truth in a way a kid could understand. And I was fine with that. I mean, Barbara was my mom in all the ways that mattered. When I was 18, right before going to college, Barbara sat down with me and gave me more details about the whole situation. She explained that Karen had problems with drugs and alcohol when I was born, that my biological father was never in the picture, I don't even know who he is to this day, and that Karen basically wasn't in any condition to be a mother. She told me that after abandoning me, Karen had been in rehab a couple of times, had moved to another state, and eventually cut contact with the whole family, including Barbara and my grandparents. Nobody had heard anything from her in years. I got a little angry when I found all this out. I'm not gonna lie. Not at Barbara, obviously, but at Karen. Like, who does that? Who abandons their 4-year-old kid and then completely disappears? But I was also already an adult and had my own life, so I didn't keep dwelling on it. I went to college, studied computer science, got a good job after graduating, met Nicole like 3 years ago, we got engaged last year, and honestly, my life was pretty good. Barbara was still my favorite person in the world. Dylan and I were super close. My grandparents were still alive and healthy, and I had built a life I liked. And then, like 8 months ago, I received a Facebook message from someone named Karen Wilson. The message said something like, "Hi Samuel, I know this is going to be a surprise, but I'm your biological mother and I would really love to be able to talk to you if you're open to that. I've thought about you all these years and I would love to have the opportunity to reconnect. Please consider it." She attached a photo of herself, and honestly, I didn't recognize her at all. She was a woman of like 48 years old, brown hair, normal smile, looked like any average person. I stared at that message for like an hour, not knowing what to do. I showed it to Nicole first, and she was very careful with her response, like, "It's completely your decision. Whatever you do, I support you." Then I called Barbara and told her about it. Barbara sighed deeply and told me, "Look, honey, you're an adult and you can make your own decisions, but please be very careful. Karen didn't contact you for 20 years for a reason, and if she's showing up now, she probably wants something. I'm not saying, don't listen to her if you want to, but protect your heart, okay? I decided to respond to her. I guess I was curious, or maybe a part of me wanted answers. I don't know exactly. I told her we could meet at a public cafe, just to talk. She agreed immediately, too quickly looking back, and we agreed to meet that weekend at a Starbucks near my work. She arrived on time, I'll give her that. She looked nervous, was wearing a blue sweater and jeans, and when she saw me, she went into excited mom mode instantly. She tried to hug me, and I took a step back. Like, let's go slow. We sat down, and she started talking, and talking, and talking. She told me this whole story about how she had been struggling with addictions when I was little, how abandoning me was the hardest decision of her life, how she had been in therapy and rehab, and how now she was married to a man named Matthew, who was an accountant and lived in a nice suburb like 2 hours from where I lived. She showed me photos of her house, told me about her dog, told me she had thought about me every birthday, every Christmas, and I was just sitting there thinking, okay, so what? Like she expected me to be moved or something, but honestly, I didn't feel anything. This woman was a stranger to me. She didn't raise me. She wasn't there when I got sick, when I learned to ride a bike, when I graduated from high school. Barbara did all that. Then Karen said something that immediately put me on alert. She casually mentioned that she had had some health problems recently, nothing serious according to her, but that the treatments were expensive and her insurance didn't cover everything. She didn't ask me for money directly in that first meeting, but she dropped the comment there, like casually. And I thought, okay, there it is. Barbara was right. This isn't about reconnecting. This is about what she can get from me. I told her I needed time to process all this, and that I would contact her if I decided I wanted to continue communicating. She got kind of insistent, saying she had already lost so many years and didn't want to lose more time, but I stayed firm and left. On the way home, I called Barbara and told her everything, and she just said, I knew it. I knew something like this was going to happen. Like 2 weeks passed, where Karen sent me messages every 2 days. Things like, have you thought about what we talked about? I would love for you to meet Matthew. We could have dinner. And I honestly didn't know what to respond because on one hand I thought, maybe she deserves a chance. And on the other hand I thought, this woman abandoned me. I don't owe her anything. Nicole suggested I go to therapy to process all this. So I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Harris, who was very helpful in helping me understand my emotions about the whole thing. After talking with Dr. Harris a couple of sessions, I decided I didn't want to have a relationship with Karen. I simply didn't feel any connection with her, and her comments about money and health made me completely distrust her intentions. I sent her a very polite but firm message telling her I appreciated that she had contacted me, but that I wasn't interested in developing a relationship, that I wished her the best, but that I preferred to keep my distance. I thought that would be the end of it. But oh no, it wasn't the end. Not even close. Like a week later, I received a Facebook message from a guy named Matthew Hayes, who introduced himself as Karen's husband. His message said, Hi Samuel, I know this is weird, but I need to talk to you about Karen. Can we talk on the phone? It's important. I was like, what the hell? But I gave him my number, because I was curious about how important this could be. Matthew called me that same night and basically dropped a bomb on me. Turns out, Karen had never mentioned to him that she had a son. Never. In the 8 years they had been married, she had told him she couldn't have children due to medical problems, but never mentioned she already had a son she had abandoned 20 years ago. Matthew found out about my existence because he saw the messages between Karen and me on her computer and was completely shocked. He told me Karen had been acting really weird lately, secretly making calls, hiding things from him, and he thought maybe she was having an affair or something. When he discovered the messages about me, he confronted her, and she finally admitted the whole story. Matthew sounded genuinely upset, like he couldn't believe she had hidden something so big. He asked me if I knew why Karen had contacted me now after so long, and I told him what I suspected about the money and her health problems. Matthew was quiet for a moment and then said, Look, I think there's something you need to know. Karen is sick. She has kidney failure and is going to need a kidney transplant soon. She's been on dialysis the last few months, and her health is deteriorating. I froze. Everything was starting to make sense. Karen didn't contact me because she wanted to know me or because she missed me. She contacted me because she needed an organ. I told Matthew I appreciated him telling me the truth, but that my answer was still no. That I didn't want any relationship with Karen, and definitely wasn't going to consider donating a kidney to someone who abandoned me as a child. Matthew told me he completely understood and that he was sorry about the whole situation. He asked me not to tell Karen that he had contacted me because she would be furious, and I promised I wouldn't say anything. I seriously thought about just blocking Karen and moving on with my life, but I felt I owed some kind of closure to the situation. So I wrote a letter, like a real 2-page letter, explaining exactly how I felt. I told her I understood she was sick, but that didn't change the fact that she had abandoned me. That Barbara was my real mother and the only one who was there for me. That I didn't owe her anything, and that I needed her to respect my decision not to want a relationship. I told her I didn't hate her, but that I also had no desire to have her in my life. I sent it certified mail to make sure she received it. Karen's response was intense. She sent me like 10 messages in a row saying I was selfish, that she was my mother no matter what, that I had her blood running through my veins and therefore had a moral obligation to help her, that Barbara had poisoned me against her, that how could I be so cruel to let her die when it was in my power to save her. They were really manipulative and ugly messages, accusing me of being a bad son, telling me God was going to punish me for abandoning my sick mother. I blocked her number and her Facebook after that. I told Barbara, Nicole, Dylan, Dr. Harris, everything. Everyone supported me and told me I had done the right thing. That I had no obligation to someone who had abandoned me. That donating an organ is a huge decision that nobody should feel pressured to make out of guilt or manipulation. I thought that was the end of everything. I was wrong. Like a month later, I received a message on Instagram from an account I didn't know. It was from a young girl, maybe 16 or 17 years old, who introduced herself as Melissa, Karen's daughter. Apparently, Karen and Matthew had a daughter together like 17 years ago, which Karen had also omitted mentioning in our conversations. Melissa sent me a super emotional message telling me her mom had told her about me, that she always wanted to have an older brother, and that, please, I should consider getting tested to see if I was compatible as a kidney donor, because her mom was dying and she didn't know what to do. I felt horrible for this girl, honestly. It wasn't her fault to be in the middle of all this situation. But it also wasn't my responsibility to save Karen. I responded to Melissa as kindly as possible, explaining that I understood the situation. It was difficult, but that I didn't have a relationship with her mom and that I had decided to maintain healthy boundaries. I suggested she talk to the doctors about other options, waiting list for transplants, other possible donors in the family. Melissa responded that they had already tested several relatives on Matthew's side, but nobody was compatible, and that I was their last hope. I blocked that account too. Sounds cruel. I know, but I was starting to feel harassed. There was no way to maintain boundaries if every month someone new appeared pressuring me about the same topic. Nicole told me I was doing the right thing, that I had to protect my peace of mind and my well-being. Things escalated even more when, like 2 weeks later, Karen and Matthew showed up at my work. They literally showed up at my company's office asking to speak with me. The receptionist called me confused, saying there were 2 people here saying they were family of mine, and I went down to the reception and there they were. Karen looked terrible, honestly, like she had lost a lot of weight and looked super sick. Matthew was there holding her arm. I went out to the parking lot with them because I didn't want to make a scene inside my office. Karen started begging me, literally on her knees in the parking lot, crying, telling me she was dying, that I was her only biological son, that if I didn't at least get tested to see if I was compatible, she was going to die in the next few months. Matthew was also begging, saying they would do anything, that they would pay all my medical expenses, that they would give me money, whatever I needed. I told them to leave, that they were crossing all boundaries, that if they showed up at my work again, I was going to call the police. Karen screamed that I was a monster, that what kind of person lets their own mother die, I went back inside the building, shaking with rage and frustration. My boss saw me and asked me if everything was okay, and I had to explain a whole situation to him for the first time, because I needed them to know in case Karen showed up again. That night, I talked to a lawyer. Nicole has a friend who's a family lawyer, and he gave me a free consultation. He told me that technically Karen and Matthew weren't doing anything illegal yet, but that if the harassment continued, I could seek a restraining order. He suggested I document all contacts, save all messages, and make it very clear in writing that I didn't want any more communication with them. I sent a formal email through the lawyer to Karen and Matthew, telling them that any additional contact would be considered harassment and that we would take legal measures if they didn't stop. For a couple of weeks, everything went quiet, and I thought they had finally understood. But then I received a call from my boss saying we needed to talk urgently. Turns out Karen had called my company claiming I had threatened her, that I had stolen money from her, making up all kinds of crazy lies trying to get me fired. My boss didn't believe her because obviously I had already given him context about the whole situation, but it was super disturbing that she would go to those extremes. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I hired the lawyer officially, and we started the process to get a restraining order and file a defamation lawsuit. The lawyer sent a very serious cease and desist letter explaining all the legal actions we would take if Karen or any member of her family tried to contact me again. I also made the decision to share my story publicly. I made a long post on my Facebook and on my personal blog explaining the whole situation, without giving too many personal details about Karen, but being honest about the abandonment, the manipulation, the harassment. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Hundreds of people sent me messages of support, many sharing their own stories of toxic or manipulative biological parents. A few told me I was horrible, that I should help my mother no matter what. But the vast majority understood my position. Karen apparently saw the post because she tried to leave comments defending herself, saying I was lying, that she was the victim. I deleted her comments and blocked her from all my social media. I also changed my phone number and made sure only my close people had the new one. The legal process moved forward. We got the temporary restraining order, and we had a hearing scheduled to make it permanent. Karen and Matthew hired a lawyer too, and their strategy was basically to try to paint me as a cruel son who was abandoning his dying mother. Their lawyer tried to argue that I had a moral obligation to at least get tested for compatibility. My lawyer destroyed him in court, presenting all the evidence of the original abandonment, the manipulative messages, the harassment at my work, the lies Karen told my employer. The judge was incredibly understanding. She made the restraining order permanent and ruled in our favor on the defamation lawsuit. Although the damages were minimal because technically Karen hadn't caused real financial damage since I didn't get fired. But winning the case was important to me symbolically, you know? It was a validation that what I was doing wasn't cruel or selfish, but necessary to protect myself. The last I heard from Karen was like 3 months ago. She and Matthew showed up outside my house one night, knocking on the door insistently. I was inside with Nicole watching a movie, and suddenly we heard the doorbell ringing over and over. I looked out the window and there they were. I didn't even open the door, just called the police immediately. It took them like 15 minutes to arrive, and by that time Karen was yelling from outside, begging me to open, saying she just wanted to talk for a minute. The police removed them from my property and explained to them that they were violating a restraining order. Matthew started arguing with the officers, but eventually they took them away in separate patrol cars. They spent a few hours at the police station, but they weren't formally arrested, just given a serious warning that next time they would face criminal charges. I haven't heard anything since then. I've heard through Matthew, who sent me one last email before my lawyer told him to stop, that Karen is currently on a waiting list for a kidney transplant from a cadaveric donor. Apparently her condition is stable for now with dialysis, although she doesn't feel well. Part of me feels sorry for her. Honestly, nobody deserves to be sick. But another part of me is furious that she thought she could reappear after 20 years and emotionally manipulate me to get what she wanted. I've been in therapy regularly processing all this. Dr. Harris has helped me a lot to understand that setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad person, that I didn't cause Karen's illness, and that her decisions 20 years ago had consequences she now has to face. We've also worked on my relationship with Barbara. making sure she knows how much I love her and appreciate everything she did for me. Nicole and I are getting married in 3 months. Barbara is helping to plan the whole wedding and is more excited than anyone. Dylan is going to be my best man. My grandparents are going to be there. All the people who matter are going to be present celebrating with us. And Karen won't be there, because she's not part of my life and never really was. Sometimes I still wonder if I did the right thing. There are nights where I can't sleep, thinking, what if she dies because they didn't find a donor? Am I going to carry that guilt the rest of my life? But then I think about everything, about how she abandoned me, how she manipulated me, how she harassed my family and tried to ruin my career, and I realize I don't owe her anything. Donating a kidney isn't like lending money or giving someone a ride. It's major surgery with real risks. It's something that affects your body forever, and nobody has the right to demand that from another person, not even your biological mother. Barbara told me something a few weeks ago that really stuck with me. We were having coffee together, and I was telling her about my anxiety regarding the whole thing with Karen, and she took my hand and told me, "Honey, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep warm someone who left you in the cold when you were little." And she's right. I built a good life with the people who chose me and stayed with me. That's my real family. The last time I saw Dr. Harris, I asked him if someday I would stop feeling guilty for saying no. He told me there would probably always be a small part of me that wondered what if, but that over time that voice would get smaller and smaller until I could barely hear it. I hope he's right. For now, I'm focusing on my wedding, on my career, on building a life with Nicole. We're talking about having kids in a few years, and when that happens, I know exactly the kind of father I want to be. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be consistent, and I'm never going to abandon my children no matter how hard life gets. Barbara taught me that, and it's probably the most important lesson I'm going to carry with me forever.